is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
Never step onto the battlefield of ideas unprepared. Before you enter the fray, you need a plan. And there's no better place to get one than right here on Tactics with host Caleb Colquitt. The Situation Room goes live now on News Radio 1440.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Tactics. We're here on News Radio 1440 on location at the Alabama FFA State Convention right here in Montgomery, Alabama. And we've caught up with a couple of members, so we're going to be doing some interviews. And first up, we have Monica Arroyo.
That's it right there.
Arroyo,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Whew. Yeah, sorry, I'm terrible with names. It's like a running joke with me and my audience.
Good. It's different. It's different.
There's all these politicians with goofy names, and I always misrepresent.
Oh, yeah.
I always say them wrong.
No,
But anyway.
it's all right.
All right, so thank you so much for being with us,
Yes, sir.
Monica. And you are the chapter historian, I understand.
Yes, sir.
All right. So what's that like? Because that's actually an office we never had. So
Yeah. Well, in our chapter, we run for positions, and then so actually, our original historian, ended up leaving, and so I just kind of took up for the position.
Okay.
And
cool.
to be honest, it's I like it, but I'm not real familiar with it, if that makes sense, you know.
Okay, so you're
But,
kind of new to the job.
Yeah, I'm new to it. Yes, I'm new to it.
So
But-
do y'all select? Because I know every chapter does it different. Did y'all actually select your officers at the end of the year, or do you do it at the beginning of the year?
We did it at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, we stick to our position throughout the year, and then
Okay.
as a new year comes up in school, we select new officers.
So what year are you in school? Are you 9th grade, 10th grade?
I'm gonna be a senior this upcoming school year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I've been in FFA. It's gonna be my 3rd year.
Okay.
And I'm so proud I joined the program, because without it, I don't have a way to help others and give ideas to the community, and I don't know, it's a great experience.
Yeah, that's certainly an excellent way to give back to the community.
Oh, yeah.
So what drew you into the FFA? What really appealed to you?
I've always been I've always liked outside work, and
Okay.
flowers are always appealing to me, and I found out about the program at my school. We have a tech center, and so schools from different areas come to that school, and then I actually saw a flyer, and I saw plants on there, and it said horticulture, and I was like, okay, and I joined, and then in that program, FFA is something we have in that class, and I joined, and it's been one of my best decisions.
Okay, so
So
you
far in
actually
school
joined
year.
for the horticulture program.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one area my chapter didn't do a whole lot of, so
Yeah.
I'm less familiar with it. So is this your first state convention?
It is my first state convention, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What's your first impression?
I think it's amazing. I've never seen so many people, so drawn into the same thing.
Yeah.
All different categories, but I think FFA really does bring everybody together in its own way.
Yeah, it really does. And one thing that I've always really liked about it is, whether you're somebody like you that's really into horticulture,
Right.
or somebody that really likes the livestock events, or
Right. somebody
somebody that's more drawn to parliamentary procedure or public speaking,
Right.
at the end of the day, you're all wearing the same blue jacket,
Oh, yeah.
and you all have the same values. And so that's it really is a unifying force.
Yes, sir.
So I was wondering, speaking of that, what have been some of the best experiences? Like, it can be a personal story,
Right.
or what are some of the experiences you've had in FFA? How has it benefited you?
One of the best experiences have been, my sophomore year. We went to district, and we ended up placing 6th place, and then that really tore me and my team down a little bit. We were
Right.
kind of down, but we came back this year, junior year, and then we were just really motivated. Ended up getting 1st place in district for nursery landscape,
Well,
and then
congratulations.
that had to be one of the best moments so far. Just the determination of my teammates, and then myself, and it was a drive I really haven't had in a minute.
So this morning they actually announced the results of the state contest. Were y'all in the state finals?
No,
or?
we did not. I don't know.
I
what
mean, that's a
happened.
tough contest.
Yeah,
It really is.
I don't know what happened, but I think we did give it our all, and we're here, and then next year we can always strive and continue to move forward.
Well, that's one thing that I always really appreciated about the FFA, because I did it for a long time too. I was in CDE events the entire time I was there, and I didn't win, the first time every time, but every time I got better.
Yes, sir.
And that's really the point of it, is that because it's an education program, it's not so much that you win everything, because you don't win everything, and,
Right.
and there's always one winner and a lot of people that didn't wind up doing that, but everybody improves, everybody learns things, and they gain a lot of useful skills through that.
Yes, sir. Definitely, I agree.
So are you going to be using this later in life? Are you going to maybe major in ag or pursue a career in ag?
Probably, yes. I want maybe have like be like a contractor, if that makes sense.
Okay, great.
Be some form of contracting for landscape.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Especially in this state, landscape's huge. I mean,
yes, sir.
that's where the money is, honestly.
Oh, yeah. It's always been appealing to me, and I want to continue to stay interested in that field.
Excellent. So this is something that you might even make a career out of the things that you've learned in FFA.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
So what are your plans this year? Does your chapter have any big events coming up?
Next year, I think next year at the beginning of the year, we're all going to talk about, what all we have in mind and what goals we have for the upcoming year.
So your program of activities.
Program of activities. Yes, sir. Yeah. We did good this past year, and probably continue to have the same amount next year, maybe more.
Great. Now, a lot of chapters do a banquet. Do you, as a chapter officer, do y'all plan a banquet? Is that something that your chapter does?
No, not really a banquet. I mean, we have like we have a grill out, and we just recognize the moments that we had in the classroom, and then go over our goals and what we achieved. But
okay, so that's very similar to a banquet,
right?
Very
Very similar.
Food and
Yeah,
you've got
very
the
similar.
awards.
But it's not official.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's good.
Great.
I enjoy it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Monica.
Yes, sir.
It was great
Thank
to
you.
meet you.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
And we'll be back in just a second. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tactics. We are on location right here at the Alabama FFA State Convention, right here in Montgomery at the Impact. So we have been on the convention floor, and we have another interview for you with Miss Leanna Burkhalter, who is the North District reporter. So how you doing, Leanna?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing excellent. So how did you come about becoming a North District officer? What's the process for that?
Well, first off, I started talking to my ag teacher about wanting to run for a district position. And so then we kind of talked about what I need to do to get some experience the year prior. And then we began the kind of application process, getting together my SAE projects, going to different events like state convention and national convention, and then going to workshops and stuff to help.
So is this your first state convention, or have you been before?
This is my second state convention.
Okay, how old are you?
I'll be 15 in August.
All right, so that would make you a sophomore, junior?
Sophomore.
Sophomore. Okay, so you're going to be a sophomore this next year.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wow, going into being a sophomore, already a district officer. That's impressive.
Yes, sir.
I know I was a junior before I became Central District Office, so that's really impressive. So you said that you and your ag teacher had a conversation about some of the things you needed to do to prepare for this.
Yes,
What
sir.
are some of those things? Like you mentioned your SAE, for example. What exactly was your SAE?
So for my SAE, I worked with market lambs, and I raised them, and then I prepared them for my wethers to go to the slaughter, and then I prepared my ewe lambs to become breeding sheep. And so
Okay.
my SAE just kind of talked about what I had to do to show them, how I had to feed them, like how I had to focus on like how much protein and stuff to get them built for what kind of industry I was putting them into.
All right, so it sounds like you spent quite a bit of time and capital in that. Have you gotten to the level to where you can get your state degree yet?
No, sir, not yet.
Okay, but you are working on it. You plan
Yes,
to get your
sir.
state degree. All right. And for those in our audience that don't actually know, the way that you get your state degree is, I believe at least the level when I was in it, was $1,500?
Yes, sir.
$1,500. Okay, so that hasn't changed. So yeah, once you've spent that and brought that back in profit, then you'll actually be able to apply for state office.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any ambition to become a state officer yourself?
I want to run for dual office next year, and then see where that takes me.
All right, so for dual office, that means that you run, and then if you get state office, then you're a state officer, but if you don't, you still get to be a district officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So when it comes to being a reporter, give us a little information on that. Specifically, what are your roles in the North District officer team as the reporter?
So my duties are kind of just inform people about things we do in our FFA. So for the North District, I have to inform people about what we're doing currently, kind of keep the kids updated, keep ag teachers updated, and the different people.
Okay. So in other words, what you're doing is not really much different than what I'm doing right now. So,
Yes, sir.
so I can tell that you must be pretty good at your job doing media relations. You're already on the radio and on the internet. So there you go. All right. So what are some of the other? Have you been involved in any career development events yet?
Yes, sir. I did creed speaking and livestock judging.
How did you place in those?
Creed speaking, my first year I did it, I made it to the district level, but I didn't get past district. And then this past year, I did livestock judging, and we didn't make it past district.
Okay. Now, district, you have to you did creed speaking, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So in creed speaking, you have to be in the top 2 in the district, and in livestock judging, you have to be in the top 4, correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just making sure, because I have to ask these questions because they have changed some rules since I've been in it. So
Yes, sir.
now I was wondering about that. What do you plan on doing the next year? Since you did creed, are you going to transition into prepared or extemp?
I think I'm just going to focus on livestock judging.
Okay.
Because at our high school right now, we have 2 livestock judging teams. And so we've been doing a lot of camps and stuff recently to kind of help better us. And so I think I'm just going to stick with that.
Okay, great. Now, I was involved in the livestock judging contest myself, but I know a lot of our viewers probably weren't. So if you could, give us a rundown about what exactly the livestock judging contest entails.
So for livestock judging, you're given a class of livestock animals, so heifers, steers, pigs, lambs, and you have to look at them and evaluate them and basically decide which one you think is the best for the situation given, and then kind of which one's the worst. And then you have to choose your middle, so you do it on a 1, 2, 3, 4 basis. And so you just kind of have to say, okay, well, this one I think looks better structurally, or this one I think looks better meat-wise or breeding-wise, and so you have to judge them on those 3 standards.
But it's not just ranking. You also have to give reasons and justify
Yes, sir.
why you picked them that way, correct?
Yes, sir. You have to do a reason, so you're given about 25 minutes, and you have to go through and talk about why you placed them that way.
Yeah, so, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. Of course, judging and placing them correctly is important, but it also teaches public speaking skills, which obviously have improved your skills in that as well.
Yes, sir.
But it is actually more than just being able to rank them, which is of course important, but you also have to be able to basically defend your decisions and explain why you picked them the way that you did.
Yes, sir.
All right. So as far as the North District, what activities have you already been involved in? You're just the new district
Yes, sir.
reporter? Okay, so you haven't done a whole lot quite
No,
yet.
sir.
All right. So what are some of the activities that the district is involved in that you will be participating in this upcoming year?
We'll be doing officer trainings, which we do for the North District. We have like 2 of those. And then we'll be going to our officer trainings. We'll be going to our district eliminations and leading those. And then we'll be coming to state convention. And some of us might go to national convention.
Okay. So national convention, give us a little bit of background on that. Have you actually been?
Yes, sir. I went last year. It's my
Okay,
first year.
excellent. So Indianapolis, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, I know they had this weird period where they were moving back and forth, and nobody knew whether it was in Louisville or Indianapolis. It just confused everybody. So I think it's actually permanently in Indianapolis.
Yes,
now.
sir, it is.
Okay, good. So just give us a little background on that. Why would you go to nationals? Are you going to be competing in anything, or?
I never went to nationals to compete in anything. I just went for the experience of getting to meet new people, getting to see what it was about, getting to kind of market myself to others, and prepare myself for talking in front of people and stuff. And so for national convention, it was really fun. We got to do a lot of different experiences. Got to go to the Garth Brooks concert.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yes, sir. And then we got to go to, of course, the huge meetings in the basketball arenas, and which was amazing at seeing how many people were there.
Right, Conseco Fieldhouse where the Pacers play.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yeah, it's a really big event. So how was your experience at State Bend thus far?
My experience at State's been really fun. I'm just kind of tired of having to wake up so early.
That's the thing. People that haven't done it don't realize it's exhausting. You're on your
Yes,
feet
sir.
all day. But I tell you what, if you do have intentions of being a dual candidate and you actually make the cut, how exhausted you are now is going to be nothing
Yes.
compared to next year.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, if you were, say, meeting with somebody who was a green hand just a couple of years younger than you, a new member in FFA, what would you advise them to get involved in? Like, what opportunities really await you in the FFA?
Just do anything that you can. So if you're new in the FFA and you want to do a career development event, try creed speaking, try prepare public speaking, try something that gets you used to talking to people. And then, if you have an interest in livestock, do something that has to do with livestock or anything that you're interested in. Just take as many experiences as you can.
Okay, excellent. Well, as far as the whole FFA experience goes, I guess that means if you're going into being a sophomore, you actually have quite a bit of time left to develop your career.
Yes, sir.
So, do you have any aspiration to go beyond, getting your state degree, being a state officer, maybe even run for a national? Is that something you'd be interested in?
Me and my ag teacher have talked about it. I think I might want to run for nationals eventually.
Okay,
as of
great.
right now, but
we have a lot of time to decide.
I have like 2 more years of high school to decide.
So the experiences that you've had in FFA, do you intend to use those later on? Like, do you plan to major
Yes,
in
sir.
ag? Or?
Yes, sir. I want to be an ag teacher.
Wow, excellent. So you want to be able to, why ag teaching?
Honestly, I just love it. Like, when I had my first ag class and stuff, it was honestly really fun, and I loved FFA and getting to meet people and have the experience of it, and I decided this is something I really want to do.
A long time ago, there was kind of a stigma that there were no female ag teachers, that at the school you had a female home ec teacher and you had a male ag
Yes,
teacher.
sir.
Now, that's not really the case anymore.
Oh, yes, sir.
All right. So thank you so much, Leanne. For those of you who are just joining us, Leanne Burkhalter, the North District reporter. So thank you so much for being with us. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Yeah. All right. And we will be back in just a moment. And welcome back to the Alabama FFA State Convention. We are happy to be here on the convention floor getting some interviews with a few members. And now we actually have a state officer with us, Kaylin Rouse. Kaylin Rouse, you're the state sentinel this year, correct?
Yes, sir, I am.
Well, that means you're my soul sister because I was a state sentinel back in the day.
Really?
Right, so we had the same office.
Oh, that is awesome. If you don't mind, what year?
2006, 2007.
Oh, okay. That's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Long ago.
Not too bad. Not too long
Not too
ago.
bad. It wasn't too long ago, but
Right.
still, it's been a hot minute
Yeah,
now.
I understand.
So, Kaylin, tell us about your duties as the state sentinel.
Like throughout the year?
Sure.
Awesome. So
Just a little year in review.
I love it. Okay, so when we got elected last summer, we actually spent, I think we had 2 weeks off in the summer.
Okay.
So the entire summer we traveled. We went to like DC, Mississippi. We came to Montgomery a lot, had workshops, had our training done. And then we we trained the district officers. And then we helped the district officers train the chapter officers. So it's kind of like a trickle down level.
So what district are you from?
I'm from North District. I'm from Skyline.
Okay,
So I'm
okay.
super, super northeast. My house is actually like 10 minutes south of the Tennessee line. So everybody's like, oh, you're from North District. I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
You're not just North District, you're a super North District.
Yes. Like if North District had 3 districts again, I would be in that North District also.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so I got to work with them this summer, which is super awesome, and I enjoyed that. And then throughout the year, we had occasional executive committee meetings, like the state officers and Mr. Chamness and some of the state staff in Auburn and Montgomery. We did a few more workshops training throughout the year, but most of it was chapter visits and workshops close to home, and occasional conferences throughout the year as well.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that.
They kept you busy,
Oh
apparently.
yeah, definitely. I think we counted up, and I missed, this is my senior year of high school, so I missed like 60-something absences my senior year. So I missed a third of my senior year, but it was totally, totally worth it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing. That was actually one of the big driving points to get me into the state office.
Yes, you missed school.
Well, that's the thing. You've got a bad case of senioritis, and then being a state officer kind of helps you with that.
Exactly. That's why I was like, everybody's like, oh, you're actually here. And I was like, exactly. So when I got to go to school, I actually wanted to, because I was never there. So it was perfect. I enjoyed it.
I remember that school year. It was so funny. My math teacher actually was looking at the attendance sheet, and you could miss a certain amount of days based on your grade, and still not have to take your final. And she's like, well, Cockwit, you've missed like 40 days, but they're all excused, so I guess you're good.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened with mine, too. They were like, so you don't have to take your final. And I was like, no, I don't have to take this final. And they were like, you missed a third of your senior
Right.
year. I'm like, but it's an excuse. I don't have to take this final.
Yeah.
So it worked out eventually. I didn't
So
have to take the final.
if you're out there watching this, get involved in the FFA.
yeah.
You can miss school.
And not have
Don't
to take
tell
your
them
final.
that's the reason.
That's just
But-
a side plus. Like,
Right. That's bonus.
yes, totally.
So you're actually giving your RA just in a few minutes.
I am. I'm super excited, but also kind of sad because this is my goodbye, in a sense, you know. So
I mean, it is. It's a retiring address.
Yes. I'm super excited. I love the story that I'm getting to tell. It is my story, with a little bit of like inspiration in it because I had to be cool, you know. But
So can you give us just a little sneak preview? Don't give away the whole thing, but just tell us what it's about.
do you want to know like the title?
Sure.
Okay, so the title is called Pave the Way, and it's I'm the first state officer from Skyline, so it's kind of about my journey in doing that, and then helping others come along as well.
Okay.
So in kind of a short form, that's
Sure.
kind of what it's about.
Condense
So-
it down, your entire life down to about 5, maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
So it's kind of hard, but I have enjoyed. I was actually practicing just a little bit ago, so I actually didn't practice on stage for my RA until as soon as the third session ended. So that was the first time I'd ever practiced on stage, and it was just amazing. Like the difference between practicing in like a little room to practicing on the stage. Like
you
the
know,
stage
I
just
never
makes
practiced
everything.
on stage.
Are you serious?
When I did my RA, it was the first time I'd ever done it on
Really?
stage. Yes.
Oh, I would have panicked. I like to be like very prepared for everything.
See, I don't have enough sense to panic. That was the difference with me.
That's understandable.
Plus, I've been doing public speaking since I was in like 4th grade, so
Yeah.
I never
understand.
got nervous. That's why I'm doing this now for a living.
I love it. I don't really get nervous. I just get anxious and excited.
Sure.
You know. So I actually have never competed in a speaking event.
Really?
Really. I've always done team events and CDEs and some stuff like that.
Well,
so.
just based on this interview, you definitely have the ability to do it.
Thank you.
So what CDs were you involved in?
Oh, there's a bunch. The first one I ever did was nursery and landscaping, but I only did it once. I've done forestry for the past 4 years, and
That's big in Alabama.
Yes, I enjoy that one. I'm not the best at it, but I enjoy it. So, I mean,
Great.
there's that. Horse evaluation. I have horses, so I enjoyed that one too, of course. I did poultry one year, and that was the year that the coolers weren't working, and it was like 90 degrees. And so I told my advisor I was never going to do poultry again. So he gave me something else to do. Because I was like, I will do anything else, but I'm not doing poultry. And then my favorite is land judging.
Land judging.
Yes,
Okay.
that is my personal favorite.
All right. Why is that your favorite?
I don't know. I just feel like I get it so easily. Like, I know it's very confusing, but it's just so easy for me to understand. And my mom and dad both actually competed in land judging. And so they
Okay.
both still remember some of it.
So you're a legacy.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So they both still remember some of it. So my dad actually helped teach me, and we have been county champs for the past 2 years. So
Excellent.
just gonna put that out there.
Yeah. Excellent. Did you wind up going on to the district in the state?
No, we did not. We went to the district level. And I think we're like 15th out of like 40 something teams. So like not too bad, but
Yeah, the competition is fierce
it
in land
is.
judging.
It
in this state.
is. Yeah.
Some states
Douglas-
it's not nearly as big a deal, but in Alabama, that's a tough contest.
Yes, it is tough. And the day that we judged district, it was pouring down rain, and like
Oh, fun.
yeah. A lot of, I think at least 2 of the holes were like full of water, and we were like, "Can we go down in that?" And they were like, "Are you serious?" And we were like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that." So a lot of it was guessing because I was like, "I'm committed, but not that committed," because they were like 4-foot deep holes. I'm not
Right.
gonna walk all the way down in that. Just
Yeah, you get stuck in that, they may not be able to get you out.
Exactly.
No, I understand. See, that's the thing. Most of the events that I did, I showed livestock and did some other
Okay,
things,
yeah.
but I mostly stuck to Parley Pro and public speaking, and it doesn't matter what the weather is, you still do that one.
You're
so,
right. You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah, but anyway, so is this something that you're going to use later in life? Do you plan on going into an ag degree, or?
In a sense, I plan to go into equine science.
Oh, well, that's an ag degree. Yeah.
Yeah, so most people would go into ag education, but I just don't feel like that's the place for me. That's my mom, by
That's
the way.
understandable.
So she's,
Oh,
hi, Mom.
hey.
She was pointing me out. So, but I just don't really feel like that's the place for me. I don't feel like I would be a good teacher. But I do want to work in ag, so I wanted to get a degree in equine science and be an equine physical therapist.
Excellent. Well, I've got a secret for you. When I was at Auburn, I took equine because I had several electives that I could choose from, and equine was one of them. I took equine to meet girls because it was me and one other guy and like 40 girls all in the equine class.
Predominantly female.
Right.
So I can find a lot of friends, maybe not a boyfriend, but a lot of friends. So, it'll work.
Well, are you going to Auburn?
I'm actually not. I'm actually going to Middle Tennessee State in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it was a toss-up between there and the University of Kentucky. And I just felt more comfortable and more at home at MTSU. And I felt like
closer to home.
Yeah.
You're 10 minutes from the Tennessee border,
exactly.
So it's basically down the street
right.
for you.
Murfreesboro, Tennessee is actually only an hour and a half away from my house.
Okay.
So and I feel like
closer. See, that's a good distance. You're far enough away that you're actually on your own, but close enough by that if the laundry machine works, you drive home and do laundry.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm like, if I get homesick or if I just need a break, then I can go home real quick, spend the night or two, and then run back up. So I'm excited. I move sometime in the fall. Haven't worked out all the kinks yet. We're trying to get through state convention first.
Oh, are you a senior this year?
I graduated in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, see, it's hard to keep up because now they've expanded it. And because back in my day, it was only high school students and it was almost exclusively seniors. Now they've even expanded it to where you can be a state officer as a college student.
Yes,
and so because of that, I think it's great. I approved that, but I also now I have no idea what age anyone is.
Exactly. We actually have 2 state officers on our team this year that are, technically they're college sophomores now, but they served as college freshmen. And it's our vice president and our secretary, Maggie Edwards and Matthew Wilson.
Okay.
And so
I interviewed Matthew last year.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he was telling me about that. They have both said that they enjoyed it. It's a unique set of challenges, but they definitely had more time to go on visits than we did as seniors. They had more.
You're just
openings.
a little more independent as a college student.
A little bit more flexible. Yeah. So it was cool to see their state officer year versus mine. As they were very similar, but also very different.
Well, we do certainly wish you the best of luck going up to college, and I know that your time in FFA has been well served. That'll really help you. See, that's the thing. I knew a lot of pre-vet people that were not in FFA, and man, the FFA people just ran circles around them because they had ag before, and they were familiar with the material. So certainly we wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
And good luck on your RA tonight.
Thank you. I'm excited to get it started.
All right, Kaylin Rouse, who is the Alabama State Sentinel this year, soon to be retired, doing her retiring address. I know. I don't mean to make you sad, but it's
sad.
The truth. All right, we'll be back in just a second. We are here at the floor of the Alabama FFA State Convention, and we're here doing our State Convention special. So one of our guests that we have now is you're the president of the Alumni Association, correct?
Actually, I am the state director of the Alabama FFA Alumni.
All right, so State Director of the Alabama FFA Alumni Association, Mr. Barry Bailey. Welcome into the program.
Hey, glad to be here.
All right. So if you would give us an idea, because I know whenever people think of FFA, and I think that this is the way that they should think about it, it's primarily a youth organization. It's geared towards high school students. So what exactly is the role of an alumni association in a predominantly high school and college age organization?
Well, obviously the students, the FFA members, they have a lot of support from adults, their agri-science teachers, their FFA advisors, state staff, and our role is kind of like it's sort of like a support group, but maybe like a booster club, and our role is to help FFA members. And another role that we have is to help FFA advisors. Mm-hmm. So. And our name is a little bit misleading because FFA alumni members are not necessarily held to once being in the FFA. A lot of times it's parents, sometimes it's just people who are involved in agricultural businesses, or it could be...
So it could be stakeholders that aren't necessarily former FFA members.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So, in that capacity, I know that being a former advisor yourself at the Sandrock FFA chapter, that a good alumni association can be invaluable to the mission of your chapter.
Right. A lot of the things that the local alumni we have, it's kind of set up sort of like FFA is. We have local FFA alumni chapters, and then we have the state association, and then there's the national association. So what we do on the state level is we try to form new chapters across the state. We try to support those chapters, and we try to we have a couple of leadership conferences that we work with directly with students and provide those for the teachers to bring their students to. And so it's all support. I mean, we give a scholarship. We send a kid to the Washington Leadership Conference in FFA. We just do whatever we can to help on the local and the state level. But our main mission is to help kids. That's our goal.
Okay, so the Alumni Association essentially just acts as a booster, kind of like a booster club for an athletic program. Wouldn't you say that that's a pretty fair comparison?
Similar, except for the fact that we are not associated with the local school. It is a support and a booster, but it's also it's its own entity. We are actually a part of the National FFA, and that allows the alumni to have fundraisers throughout the year. They can have their own bank accounts, and then they can support. They can raise money or spend time with the kids and that kind of thing, and they're not necessarily bound by the local school as far as what they can do to help. They have a lot more leeway.
Okay. Well, I know as a member of the Alabama FFA Association myself and a lifetime member at the national level, that there are a lot of things that you can essentially be as involved or sort of, maybe even do just one event a year or something like that. You don't have to be involved all the time, but you can be if you want to. So what would you say to somebody that's interested in getting involved? And I know you said it doesn't have to be a former FFA member, but let's say you are a former FFA member and you want to help out your local chapter. How would somebody go about doing that?
Well, that's a good question. We have of course, we're online. You can find links to our program on the Alabama FFA website. We really encourage starting we call it an affiliate chapter in the community where you're from. And one of our strongest FFA alumni workers in our Sandrock, the little school that I am associated with, lives in Birmingham, but he grew up in Sandrock, and he comes back to meetings and things like that. So the first thing I would say is to try to get a chapter started in your local. But we actually just had a meeting, and we're going to try to target and push I guess you'd say an affiliation of people who don't yet have a chapter in their community, a statewide chapter, you might say. And that's one thing. You can find the information on how to start chapter online, and that's what we'd prefer you do. But we do have a lot of members who send in dues every year that their local community just haven't started one yet, and they can help by. It's not all money. They can help with their time, and they can help train kids, teams, things that they are familiar with, things they grew up doing, that kind of thing. They can support many other ways too.
Yeah, well, what are some of those other ways? So what are some of the things, for example, that the Alumni Association has been doing in the past year in Alabama? On
the state level?
Yes.
Well, we have those two leadership things. We have a leadership conference for the younger FFA members. Some schools have FFA starting as young as 7th grade. And those younger students sometimes don't get to go to all the different activities that the older students do. It's kind of like, well, if you get real involved when you're young, eventually you'll get to do some of these things. So we try to do something to kind of kick-start those kids, the younger kids. That's called AWAC. That's the Alabama Winter Alumni Camp. And then we also have a program for the older students called Chapters Presidents Conference. Like I said, we have some sponsors. One of our big sponsors is Hometown Lenders.
Tyler Tullis right here in Montgomery.
Well, yeah, and Tim Watson out of Enterprise. And they, what they do is they are providing a scholarship that is renewable for a student who's going into agriculture education and become a teacher. And so we have scholarships. We send kids on some trips. And then we, as a state organization, we have a set of state officers, and we try to help train and help the local chapters to do what they want to do on the local level.
Okay, so shifting gears here just for a second, because I'm primarily a political commentary show and I have a lot of elected officials that listen to my show. I was wondering, from your perspective as somebody who was a teacher for a really long time, and you've actually taught in 2 different states.
Right.
Is there anything that you think that our local legislatures here in the Capitol right here in Montgomery, is there anything that you think that they could do to sort of expedite the process of teaching? Like, what do you think is one of the big things that you could get some help legislatively to help improve the school system?
Well, I'd like to commend the legislators right now, because in the education budget there was some money for program specialists who are generally like me, that are retired teachers, that are going out and helping the younger teachers learn the ropes and fill out forms and applications for the kids and things like that. And there's been some money in there for that, which has been great. There is some money available for agriculture teachers who have programs in the summertime, so they can apply for some summertime employment, and that used to be the way it always was. Everybody, all the ag teachers were on 12-month contracts, but those kind of went away in a lot of places, and now they're coming back, and they have to maintain a certain standards to be able to tap into that.
Right.
Those are some things. This supporting the program, being able to help local counties and systems start new programs. We really want to keep all the programs. We don't want to have to lose any programs.
Certainly.
And so the state legislature and the state government is very important to our program. We are a government program in a sense, through the school system. So we appreciate the help that we've gotten, and we got a lot of good support. And but there's always things every year we need that come up.
Absolutely. So. Well, thank you so much, Barry Bailey, formerly the advisor at the Sandrock chapter and the director for the Alabama Alumni Association. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, I enjoyed it very much.
All right, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, to Tactics. Thanks so much for being with us. We are continuing our coverage of the Alabama FFA State Convention here on the convention floor right here in Montgomery, Alabama at the Impact. So we are here with another FFA member. Today we have Gabe Hallmark, who is the Corner High School FFA Secretary. Welcome in, Gabe.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to be with you. So one thing that I'm sure that our audience probably picked up on right away, even if they're not big into the FFA, they don't know a whole lot about it, is that you have the classic, actually the old school Courtesy Corps band. Tell us a little bit about the Courtesy Corps and what exactly you do.
Well, we're just here to maintain order, kind of. We help certain guests at their seats. We sometimes hand out programs, and basically we just help keep things running smoothly. We're kind of like the background of everything, just trying to make everything run good.
Excellent. So what job have you specifically done for Courtesy Corps so far?
I have stayed and just introduced myself. I've kind of just greeted people at the doors. I've helped at the stage, trying to help people up and down off the stage.
Okay.
And kind of just, I stayed up top sometimes, just make sure everything's running smoothly, nothing's going bad.
All right, excellent. So, where is Corner High? It's not a chapter I'm familiar with.
It's in, the reason it's called Corner, we're in Jefferson County, but we're in the corner of Blunt and Walker.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay, cool. So, North District, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. I used to know a lot. I used to know it a lot better than I do now. So, you're the chapter secretary. What grade are you in?
I'm going to be a junior.
Okay. So you've got plenty of time left over, but I've heard that you're actually one of the district officer alternates. So
Yes.
Based on how things go tomorrow with the state officers, you
Yes.
may actually wind up being a district officer.
Hoping so.
Right. So there's a couple candidates that you're really pulling for.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's great. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in FFA for the first time.
Well, I started off my freshman year. I just wanted to take ag class because it interested me. Because I
Okay.
knew I was always around farming, hunting, fishing. So I decided to take it. And then I was offered to join FFA. Why not? So I did it.
Sure.
And then my advisor asked me, hey, would you like to do a competition? I said, sure. So he signed me up for prepared public speaking my freshman year. And
Oh, exciting. That was one I was in.
yeah, it was, especially as a freshman just going into it.
Yep.
And then he asked me, would you like to run for district office? And I was like, sure, sounds fun. So this is my second year running.
Okay.
And I've done public speaking both years, and that's kind of where I am now.
So what was your speech on?
My first one when I was freshman was the negative effects of feral hogs on your land.
Okay.
And this year's was ways you can improve your farmland by recycling it.
Okay, so things like composting, that kind of thing?
Kind of, just somehow, like you can rotate livestock onto your farmland so they can
Okay.
kind of like fertilize it, keep weeds down, things like that.
So sustainable agriculture,
Yes,
essentially.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. So it sounds like you're really big into the wildlife management aspect of FFA, which is interesting because out of all the guests we've had today, we really haven't had anybody talk about that. So if you would talk to us a little bit about some of the opportunities in that specific area of agriculture that the FFA offers.
Well, even in just my ag class, you get to take a test for hunter's education and get your hunting license. And we host a lot of things to support land growth and all that, so we can sometimes use that land to hunt on.
Right.
And even with most of my speeches, there's always something to do with hunting. Like my last one about improving farmland.
Right.
There's one thing where instead of in the winter months, you can plow over your fields and plant things that help deer or turkeys. And because deer and turkey have a lot of effects on the land, and so do all wild animals, because there's always the ecosystem, always a changing ecosystem, and sometimes they just help.
Right.
And so people think you have to have livestock to be, in FFA, you have to have something in that farming or.
Show animals or crops. Right.
But sometimes you can just use the wildlife, not necessarily raising it or, managing it, but using it for your advantage in agriculture.
So I did want to ask a little bit about that because it is such a big industry in Alabama. I mean, we get a lot of tourists for hunting, that kind of thing. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of conservation in that particular area.
Well, my biggest thing about conservation is having it so generations on down can have the same opportunities I had. Like there's reasons there's laws for hunting.
Sure.
Like the $3 a year. Say everyone in the state killed $5, or some killed 10. That population is going to go down really quickly.
Right.
So there's a reason we have certain laws like that, and there's reasons that some people you need to decide what deer you need to let walk, what deer you need to kill, cold deer. You just got to kind of be observant when you're hunting, and just figure out what would be best for your land and best opportunities for yourself. Try to go off that.
There's an awful lot of people that I think get a misconception because they've just never been around it. And, they tend to think of hunters as people that are just cruel and taking the animals because they want to, and they're causing the animals to basically hunting them to extinction and that kind of thing. And that's always been my reaction to it is like, you have to remember these are people that love hunting.
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't do anything to make it to where they wouldn't be able to hunt in the future. And so there is a lot of strategy and there is a lot of concern from hunters to make sure that land and the animals that live on it are going to be preserved for future generations.
Oh, yeah. And people don't realize if people are a vital piece of the food chain.
Right.
Remove them, you're going to have overpopulation of certain animals, where you're going to see more road accidents with deer. Because you've seen some people, it'll mess their cars up. Sometimes it could take their life if they hit the deer just right.
Right.
And if you have more deer, there's more of a problem for that.
Right.
And so hunting,
there's more roaming.
There's more out there, so there's more of a chance to hit them.
Right.
And so hunters, basically, it helps with that too, because if you take them out, you're not taking all of them out. You're still going to see them. They're still going to be there.
Right.
But there's less of a chance of pushing them into urban areas and pushing them into homes where they could damage something.
Right, and what you're talking about with population, it's not just bad for humans, it's bad for the deer themselves.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, is it more humane to die quickly from a gunshot or a bow wound,
Oh, yeah.
or to starve to death in the winter? I mean, there's a big case to be made there that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
actually better for the animals overall.
It's basically like you have to harvest some animals to give the other ones a better life.
Right. All right, so tell us about your the future, your plans for your FFA career, because obviously you're young, you're just getting started out in it. Do you plan to be engaged in any more CDEs?
Well, I'm probably just going to stick with prepared public speaking. I've thought of taking the veterinary science CDE. I'm just going to kind of bounce between those two in the coming year.
All right,
Figure
great.
it out. I'm going to try to run for state office or dual next year. Try to get either another year of district officership under me or go for state office.
Okay. Well, do you think career-wise, like after high school, do you think you're going to go into an ag degree for college? Do you think maybe you'll go into ag industry? Like, what's your plans for that right now?
Most definitely. I want to go into some type of veterinary science, bioscience, just something to do with animals because that's what I love.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Gabe Hallmark, the Corner High School FFA secretary, and hopefully, you know, everything shakes out to where you get to be a district officer this year.
Hope so. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back to Tactics. Thank you so much for being with us. We are here on the convention floor at the Alabama FFA State Convention for our big FFA special, and we have another guest with us, Trace Strock of the Billingsley FFA chapter.
Billingsley, yes, sir.
Right. I have to make sure because I know you're Autauga County for sure because that's where my dad used to teach, but I was pretty sure you were Billingsley and not Prattville. So yeah, the Billingsley FFA chapter, which I guess makes us rivals because, you know, Marbury and Billingsley have been rivals for a long time. But so Trace Strock is with us, and he is actually a state officer candidate this year.
Yes, sir.
So just kind of walk us through, because the average person, even the average FFA member, doesn't really get a feel of what that's like. So just walk us through the process of how you got to that level and then what it's been like so far this week for the state officer candidates.
Well, the first thing you're going to do, you go through a series of interviews, of course, at the end. But the first thing you do a written test that is very strenuous, very time-consuming. It's a 75-question test that is very difficult questions. They don't make it a cakewalk. Then you write a letter to make sure you actually know how to format and correctly write a letter. And then you begin the interview process. You have a parliamentary procedure interview. You have a group interview in which they test to see how you interact with others. You have many different interviews, such as one of them is called Committee's Choice. They can ask you whatever they want to. And they can do whatever they want to. And it's their interview. You can't really prepare for it. And it's all about how you react to it. Then you have so many interviews you go through just to get a feel of who you are, how you act, and all. And you have to be chipper and upbeat all week. You have to keep your energy up even if you're tired. You just got to work through it, keep going, because that's what you're expected to do as a FFA state officer.
So what you're saying is the way that they conduct the interview sort of is a testing ground for what you'll be expected to do as an officer. Why is that?
Because if they interview somebody in a different way and it doesn't prepare them for what they'll have to do as a state officer, it doesn't prove to them that they can be a state officer. If they get somebody in there that doesn't know how to handle themselves under stressful conditions and they fall apart, that's exactly what FFA state officer goes through most of the time in the office, is stressful things such as convention. So they can't have somebody that can't handle stress, or they won't have a convention that year.
Right. I mean, it is an incredibly rigorous process. It's one that I've been through. And as far as the process goes, it is supposed to prepare you, in a sense, for your duties as a state officer. What are some of those responsibilities?
One of the main responsibilities is that you have to prepare the state convention. You have to get all of it. FFA is a youth-led, youth-based organization, so making chapter visits, doing many different things. That's one of the main reasons they go through such a strenuous process. You have to balance so many things, and it teaches you balancing the interviews with having fun at the convention and things like that. Having to go through that rigorous process gets you ready for preparing the convention, and as well as going to different places, talking to different people and things like that. That's all encompassed in what you have to do as a state officer.
Okay, so what are some of the things that you did to prepare for this process? Not just the things to put on your resume, but also just some of the personal preparation that you've gone through to get ready for being interviewed for a state office.
Well, other than spending much time with your father, with him helping prepare me for the state office interviews.
Right, my dad, John from Millbrook, helped train him.
I went through many nights of just basic trivia. When did it begin? How did it begin? Who wrote this? Who did that? Just all the basic trivia of the FFA that you have to know to be able to get through the written test, as well as the interviews to be able to answer them in a knowledgeable way. You have to go through and learn that as a basics, and then you get into learning to answer interview questions and to where you sound knowledgeable about what you're talking about and confident. They don't want somebody that's not confident, because let's be honest here, what is an FFA member? One of the most confident people you'll probably ever meet.
Right.
They may be humble, but they will be confident.
That's true. And that's one thing that's really important, is that you have to know the information, but you also have to be able to apply the information. And I think that's something that they really test you on as they go through the state interview process.
Yes, sir, very much so. As you go through, you don't just answer questions like in like on a test or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You actually answer questions in the interview, and they see how you respond to it. They'll ask questions in different ways to see if you can think on your feet and formulate an answer, so that you're not just standing there. If a member asks you a question, they don't want you to say, I don't know. You're supposed to be the leader of the organization. You need to at least be able to give them a knowledgeable answer. So they test how you answer, especially if it's in a different format than what you're used to. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, when was the FFA formed, they'll say, in 1928, a certain club was formed for boys in agriculture, and what was this called? For some people, they have studied down to the very minimum that in 1928, and they know that. But the way the question is worded, it might throw them off. And that's one thing. If a member asks you something in a different way than what you're used to, they want you to still be able to break it down, take it apart, answer it, and make sure they understand what you're saying.
Right, and I've always been really impressed by the way FFA members are able to do that. They're able to think on their feet quickly. They're typically very witty, very clever. The reason that they're able to do that is because of some of these processes that they go through, where they don't just want you to have the information in your head and be able to spit it back out exactly the way that you received it. They want you to actually understand it and be able to convey that to somebody else in a way they'll be able to understand it as well, because this is an ag ed program. And as state officers, you're going to have to be able to do some educating yourself.
Yes, sir. You're supposed to be one of the leaders of the FFA, so therefore, being the leader, you're looked up to by many of the younger in the group, or people who are just getting into it. They look up to you and ask you questions. They want to know how you got into it, what led you to get into it, what you can do in the FFA. Mm-hmm. It's a very key factor, because there's a lot of people think that the FFA is nothing but a good saying that we like to say in the FFA is cows, sows, and plows, and it's very different from that. Just as me, I do prepared public speaking.
Right.
And then you have things like agricultural mechanics. You have prepared public speaking, as I said, livestock judging, where you actually do deal with livestock. Mm-hmm. There's so many different avenues out in the FFA that they want you to be able to convey it in a way that somebody understands that, oh, this isn't just for people who like cows and pigs and things like that. You can get
There's certainly a place for people like that in FFA.
But, very certainly.
But there's also a place for people that don't necessarily have that affinity either.
Like one of the guys that I actually know, he is a computer programmer. Got into it like that. Went into the FFA and told some people that I don't like the FFA, I don't like what y'all are doing, and I quote, he said, the FFA is stupid. So then he got into it, realized he could do computer programming, realized he enjoyed it, got into the FFA and realized he could apply that in the FFA, and actually became one of the strong members in that FFA chapter.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, with agriculture, you're talking about an industry that comprises about 20% of the American economy, so there's a lot of diversity in careers there, and so, like you were saying, there's just a lot of different avenues that you can take that if you want to.
Oh, very much so. Anything computers, you can do livestock, you can do speaking, you can do so many different things that if you have an interest, the FFA can find a place for you if it's in the agricultural industry.
All right, so you're running for a state officer right now. What office would you like to receive? Because, of course, there's 6 different offices.
Oh, believe me, my father's always told me go big or go home. So I'm, of course, going to go for the president's position.
Okay.
But I would take any of them. I mean, being on the officer team in general is just a true honor to be there. Mm-hmm. I don't care if I'm Sentinel. That would be a true honor just to be selected out of the roughly 16,000 people in the state of Alabama to be one of 6 that was chosen to be one of the state officers.
Yeah, well, I was a Sentinel, so I can tell you it really is a big honor. I mean, obviously it's great to be president, and everybody, I would say a lot of the candidates actually strive for that, but any of the offices are incredibly important to the organization, and so it's really instrumental regardless of what position you get on the team.
And I'll be completely honest with you, even if I don't make the team, I know that I gave my best effort.
Sure.
I know that I did all I could, and if I don't make it, then it just wasn't in the plans for right then, and I just have to accept that.
So you told us that you were in the Prepared Public Speaking CDE. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was your speech about, for example?
My speech was about Dr. Temple Grandin. She had Asperger's syndrome, but she realized she had a true passion for animals, livestock, especially in the cattle industry. She went in and changed completely the way we handle animals. She studied and found that incorporating slow, graceful curves into her designs instead of straight shoots like had been implemented for many different years. Mm-hmm. She learned and studied that if you put the slopes and the curves in there, it makes them more comfortable moving through, making it more efficient. As cattle move across a pasture, they don't do like we do and go point A to point B. They actually go in a snaking motion. I know this because I raised cattle for 16 years now.
Right.
But as they go across the pasture, they go in curves. They don't go straight, so when somebody tries to force them down a straight path, they don't like it, they balk, and it makes it less efficient. If you can build a facility that they can move as they naturally move, they move by themselves. You don't even have to push them. They just go down through there because they see that's the only way they can go.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that CDE probably prepared you because a state officer, of course, has to be knowledgeable about ag issues, has to be able to speak. So in a lot of ways, even the career development event itself was preparation for being a state officer.
Oh, certainly, especially one of the things in my area is misconceptions about cattle owners. Organizations, animal rights organizations have said that cattle producers are just inhumane to their animals, and this is certainly not true. Those are our livelihoods. Those are what make us money, and also we're up at 4 a.m. taking care of them, giving them shots, doing all these different things for them. If we didn't care about them or abusing them, I promise I wouldn't be up at 4 a.m. giving them vaccinations whenever they need it.
Well, and I've always said that too, not to paint with a broad brush, but there are some people that are more in the animal rights camp that they try to paint this picture of farmers as big, evil people that are constantly abusing their animals. I'm like, you do realize that suggestion would imply that would be like a used car salesman going out and taking a sledgehammer to his cars. Like, that's how they make their money. It would be not in their best interest to treat their animals poorly.
Exactly. As I said, that's what makes us money. Why would we injure something? Why would we injure our own investment?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. Us injuring those animals is going to cost us money.
Right.
And the animal rights activist groups paint us as large corporations when the majority of Alabama farms is small family-owned farms like mine and many of my friends.
Well, that's the thing. There are several farms that they'll say, well, they're not family farms, they're corporate farms, but it's a farm that has a tie to a corporation, but they're actually still owned by the family and still run by the family that's been there for generations.
Oh, certainly. Everybody, the way you make your money, you have to have a contract.
Right.
You have a contract with somebody, but you still own that farm. They don't own you. At any time, you can back out or they can pull it. You are still your own separate entity. Mm-hmm. You produce the animals the way you want to, then you sell it to them, and that's how you make your profit.
Well, Trace, it's been really good catching up with you, and I've got to say, I feel good about your chances because so far, and this is a record that still stands, every single candidate that we have interviewed here on Tactics has gotten an office. So hopefully that trend remains true.
Hopefully I don't break that trend because that would not be fun for either of us.
No, I'm sure it wouldn't be. But thank you so much for being with us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Tactics, and we are still here at the Alabama FFA State Convention live on the convention floor, and we have yet another interview for us. Preston Hughes, you are the state Alabama FFA reporter.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So just go ahead and give us some insight into what exactly a reporter does. What's your role as a state officer here?
Right. So some things I have to do is, main thing is like connecting with agribusiness. So for example, like AFC, Alabama Farmers Cooperative, and other industries that support us, I have to reach out to them, talk with them, and also type letters for them when they ask for them, or articles. And then as a state reporter, we and as a state officer team, we also send in articles to me, and then I edit them and I send them to our advisor, and then he posts them to the state website.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's just a few of the things, and everything else is about the same as the other officers.
Right. So there is you have a lot of the same responsibilities, but you do have a handful of specialized areas.
Right.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So that actually makes sense that you're the one that got the interview. You're the reporter. You're in charge of media relations.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us, just give us kind of a year in review. What exactly this year has been like for you? Some of the experiences that you've had.
Man, I would say for one, we started this year out pretty busy. The week after we got elected, we hit the ground running. We started training. Mm-hmm. We met other CTSO groups, that's Career Technical Student Organizations. And then after that, we went to Mississippi, and we had a lot of training. We went to Washington, D.C., met our senators and representatives, got to see how our nation's capital, how they work with our government. And then moving on from that, we went to National Convention, got to be delegates and see how our delegate body, how it functions at Nationals and how we vote on things and how things are passed. And then...
Yeah, what did you think about the delegate process? Give us a little more detail on that.
So if you kind of think about the House of Representatives,
yeah,
it's the same way. You have to have a quorum, which means a certain number has to be met.
Right.
And you have to have a certain representation of so many states. And then you have a chairperson, and they present the motions to you, and you vote on it, and it either passes or fails. And some things that were voted on had to go to Congress if it concerned our federal charter, which allows us to have ag in the classroom in every state and every territory in the United States.
Right, and so this is actually something that our senators and House representatives had to look at.
Right. Yeah, so that's why we were in Washington, D.C. in the first place, was because we were advocating for agriculture and the Farm Bill at the time, but we were also advocating for our federal charter, because we wanted it and we needed it passed so the FFA could circumference the 21st century and not be so far behind.
Did y'all get a chance to talk to Secretary Perdue?
We did. He was actually at National Convention, so on the delegate floor, he came by and we got to talk with him, and then he spoke to the whole group when we were in Washington, so we've actually met him on numerous occasions.
Right, and I know that at National Convention, not only was Secretary Perdue there, but you actually got a visit from President Trump as well.
That's right, and where we were sitting, it was probably, I'd say 20 feet or so.
Oh yeah, the delegates get prime seating.
Especially Alabama, we were on like the second or third row.
Right, because you get the, it's done alphabetically, so
yeah,
Alabama's really close to the front.
Oh yeah, so it was nice at Nationals, and then after Nationals, we moved on basically now to here. We had a few, like trainings and stuff in between, but the biggest thing after Nationals is state, and we've been prepping for this by getting our scripts ready as state officers, and remembering our retiring addresses, and now we're here at the state convention, and we're wrapping it up almost. We're about to start the fourth session here in just a little bit. So
yeah, a lot of people don't realize this is a massive undertaking.
Yes.
It's a multimedia event, and you guys start preparing for this back in what, January?
Yeah, December, January. We get our scripts in January. We start editing them. Mm-hmm. You have deadlines you have to meet with turning in paperwork, whether it's your RA or if it's your scripts. Like the scripts are what you read off in the session. So
right,
introducing people, awards, that kind of thing. So it is a lot of work and a lot of undertaking for each officer, for sure.
So I actually did want to ask you about that. When is your RA? Have you already presented it, or is yours coming up?
So I actually presented mine at the end of the last session.
Okay.
Mine was about leaving a legacy of for the next family member in line.
Okay.
So my legacy was gave to me by my cousin who was killed in a car wreck. So it was neat how I could connect with the members on that, because a lot of people came to me afterwards saying they could relate a lot because they've been through similar things. So you never know what a speech can do.
I do think that the RAs especially accomplish this, but a lot of people don't understand if you've never been to an FFA event, if you've never been to something like this, you kind of become a minor celebrity. And there are people that because you're on stage so much, because you're meeting members all week, they kind of feel like they get to know you. And a story like that is something where you get to make a personal connection with the members.
Right. And also during, like this year, you meet members through chapter visits. So when it comes time for state, you see a lot of those members that you've met. So you're already pre-connected with a bunch of members, but then you meet even new ones that maybe you didn't get to visit or you haven't seen during your state officer year. So it's the best of both worlds. And I guess you could say you're considered a celebrity, but if you're really a humble person, you don't take it up that way. You're just you and you're doing your job, And that's what we're here for. We're not here to be popular. We're not here to be famous. We're here to serve our members and our state.
Right, and that's the thing. There are some perks to it, and there's a little bit of prestige, but primarily it's a service role.
Right. Yeah, you are voted in, and you have to have experience prior to, but it's really important to, like I said a minute ago, to be humble and to always keep your members in mind, because that's where our main focus is, and that's where our support comes from. So without our members, we wouldn't be where we are today as officers. That's 100% for sure on that.
So how do you guys show your kind of appreciation for that, and how do you help out those members that you are, that it's part of your job to serve them? How do you do that?
Well, like I mentioned a minute ago, so you have these things called chapter visits. So that can range anything from going out and doing a workshop with them and presenting maybe a slideshow, or doing some fun activities with them and talking with them and kind of bonding with them, or maybe going to a luncheon and, get to be a guest speaker, and then you eat with some members, talk with them. Or it can even be to the point of you're invited out to a banquet and you're talking with them at that banquet. You maybe get to speak, and then while you're there, you get to see the things those FFA members do, because they usually want to brag about their main accomplishments that year.
Well, especially at a banquet, because it's an awards banquet.
Right. And so I think we can really give back by, one, being supportive, two, just being a listening ear, but three, being that friend that some of those members don't have, because some of them. They may not have a good home life, they may not have a good school life, or whatever it is, they may be struggling at school. And we're really there not only to be an officer, but to be a friend and to be a mentor. Because some of those people are looking for that, and sometimes we show up at the right time.
Well, that's the thing, too, that ultimately, just like any other organization, it's about the people.
That's right.
Of course it's about agriculture education. Of course it's about academics and furthering your career, furthering your education. But at the end of the day, the FFA organization is about people, and especially at convention, I think.
Yes.
There is a feeling as though there's a commonality, a camaraderie, and you feel like you're part of a really big family.
That's right. And I would definitely say being a state officer, it teaches you how to not see people as gender or color or race or religion, anything like that. You see people for people. So when you meet members, maybe you go to a school that's minority-based or a school that's predominantly based on a different religion. You don't see that. You see just the members for who they are as people. And that's been a big thing for me. It's really opened my eyes to who Alabama really is as a state, who we represent in FFA and who we represent in agriculture. And it's forever changed my mind about how we should view things.
Well, and that's one thing that I've said, and I'm not going to get overly political because that's what every other episode of the show is about. But one of the things that really is great and really establishes that sense of camaraderie that I was talking about is when you put on that blue jacket, you're an FFA member.
Yes.
You're not a black FFA member, you're not a Hispanic FFA member, you're not a female you're just an FFA member.
That's right.
And everybody, regardless of skin color, creed, background, sexual orientation, you're wearing the same blue jacket.
That's right.
And that's really the thing that's important, and that's what everybody else sees as important in this organization as well.
Definitely. Inclusivity is the key to making the FFA, spin in the way it does, to keep it going. Because without each person of color, each person of race or religion, we wouldn't have what we have, especially when it comes down to genders. If we didn't have women in the FFA, we wouldn't have leaders, because 50% of FFA's leaders is women.
Right.
Think about that. You can't have an officer team if you don't have women now.
Not nowadays.
No.
That was actually a joke that I would tell people when I was teaching them FFA history. And I'm sure that you're aware of this, that FFA permitted girls in, and then 2 years later, we already had delegates.
Yes.
We already had female delegates, which is not as you were talking about being a delegate, that's a really prestigious thing, and not many people get to do that.
Right.
And so 2 years later, we already had women in leadership roles. So, it only took them 2 years, and women started taking over.
That's right. Hey.
But it's great.
Women have done great things for FFA, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
How many girls do you have on your officer team this year?
It's split even, 3 girls and
That's
3
what
guys.
I thought.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna tell you, those 3 girls, they keep all of us 3 guys spinning correctly. I mean, without them, we'd be lost. I mean, 100% creds to them.
And your president is female this time
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
And she's great, man. I mean, she keeps all of us in line, even the other 2 girls. So
right,
definitely.
It was the same way with me. We had a female president when I was a state officer.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah. All right, so tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a state officer. Like, what was your SAE? What contest were you involved in?
Well, man, so to start out, I had 0 ag background. I mean, none of my family were farmers. I actually got into it, like I said a minute ago, because I had a cousin who was in Georgia.
Okay.
And when I went to his funeral after he was, in that car wreck, I saw all the FFA members lined up from the door to the parking lot and all around the funeral home in what was literally a sea of blue jackets waiting.
Yeah.
And I said, whatever group that is, because I didn't know it was an organization at the time, I wanted to be a part of it. So from that day on, the year after that was my 9th grade year. Mm-hmm. So I joined FFA, found out about it. Yeah, I mean, it's about agriculture, but man, I really found my heart in when you say contest, in the forestry contest and the land evaluation, because it's about being outside in the woods, being in the fields, being, like getting your hands dirty, getting your boots dirty. You're not
right.
just...
We're a vocational education organization.
Right, but at the same time, like I've competed in small engines, which is where you got to understand how an engine works. Aquaculture, where you study fish, I mean, and their habitats. I mean, so I've done a lot. And so my SAE you mentioned, when I ran for state office, it was vegetable production. So at that time in that year, I was growing an acre of vegetables, any vegetable you could think of, even fruits I was growing. And now it's ag education, where I go in classrooms and teach students, give workshops, do slideshows, things like that.
All right.
And poultry production's the other one, because I work on a poultry farm. So we grow broilers, which is meat birds.
So that's really interesting that you were somebody that had pretty much 0 ag background,
Right.
and it was that what we were talking about earlier, that personal touch that got you in the door,
That's
and then
right.
you realized you actually do have a passion for agriculture.
And another thing about my background is most of this, actually all the state officers except for me this year, were district officers prior to. I was not a district officer. I went straight from the chapter, which is the school level, all the way to the state level.
Yeah, my brother actually did that. He
Oh,
was
no
never
way.
a district officer. Yeah,
Wow.
that's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's been hard because you got to learn to adapt quick. You got to learn how to think on your feet really quick.
Right.
When you don't have that previous experience, you got to learn everything brand new, unlike these other people where they've kind of already done this before.
Right. I mean, even if you go from being a district to a state officer, there's still a learning curve.
Yes.
But if you're going straight from chapter to state, that's like a learning brick wall.
You ain't kidding. I mean, it's like trying to jump hurdles without knowing how to jump them.
Right. But one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because you seem to have that real personal touch, and you seem to have developed a real passion for agriculture. What would your advice be to somebody that's watching this that maybe is considering either going into ag themselves, or they have a kid that's in high school that might be considering this? What would your advice be to them if they're just not real sure about it?
First thing I would say is find the thing that makes you happy. Mm-hmm. So FFA, like we said a minute ago, it's agriculture, but it's also more than agriculture. I mentioned our federal charter. It got amended because we recognize FFA can no longer just be 100% about ag. It's about industry. It's about biotechnology. It's about, chemical study. It's about all sorts of things that we have. Mm-hmm. And I would say find the thing in the FFA that makes you happy. And also with FFA, you got woodworking in the shop. You got, shop experience where you learn how to weld, pipe fit. You learn how to make things out of wood, out of metal. Like I said,
things that somebody can make a career out of, or just have as a hobby and a useful skill.
So no matter what it is, if it's in the shop or in the classroom, or if you love a certain contest, if you love that contest or you love that certain thing, when you graduate, you have those skills, and that can help you in the career field. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely say find the thing that you enjoy, but also have a passion for it.
Right.
Because I know me having a passion for the FFA has really helped me. And the last thing is, FFA is the largest youth leadership organization in the nation, with over 650,000 members. So it's also something to take pride in. It's being the biggest group or biggest organization in the nation, we have something to stand on. We have a very great history, reaching all the way back to 1928. So I mean, there's foundations and roots that have been established for us. So there's help out there if you need help. There's people that mentor you. There's advisors, guides. I mean, it's been something that I would never change for anything in my life. It's helped me more when you're raised up without a father figure, and you're raised up going through hard times and losing family. This group has been there through everything, and it's more than just a friendship. It's a lifestyle.
Well, thank you so much, Preston.
Oh, yeah.
You seem like somebody with a lot of passion for this organization, and I love to see that.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
And we will be back in just a moment. Welcome back, all. We are here with yet another guest here on the floor of the Alabama FFA Convention. Very excited to be able to bring this special broadcast to you. We are here now with Skylar Eckel, who is the North District Vice President for this year and a state officer candidate.
Yes, sir.
So you have a full plate.
A little bit.
Yeah. No, I actually, are you the, okay, I got to remember how to word this. Are you the current vice president, or how does that work? You're not a dual candidate, are you?
I'm not. I'm the one that is retiring.
Okay, so you're retiring as VP, and you're currently a state officer candidate.
Yes.
Okay, because you always have to ask that question because you don't know if I will be the vice president if I don't get a state office, and so.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing to do.
But no, it's understandable. So, well, I tell you what, before we get into the state officer candidate stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit about being a district vice president?
So being district vice president means that I go to all the chapters in the North District that I can and go on chapter visits. I get to talk to the members, help them learn more about FFA, about agriculture, and help them grow a lot. Mm-hmm. And I just recently watched one of my first chapter visits, the first year that I was district vice president, run for district officer and get it. So it's a very rewarding experience.
Yeah. No, I absolutely understand that. It's really great when some of your friends or chapter mates do really well.
Yeah.
It's a great sense of accomplishment. I mean, we're competitive. We like to win, but it's always great to see somebody else succeed as well.
I love being able to know that I helped with that, help push it a little bit.
So since that seems to be something that you really enjoy, are you thinking about applying that later in life? You thinking about being an ag teacher? Or?
I actually chose to go into nursing. I recently graduated high school, and I'm going to a college nearby to do nursing.
Okay. Well, that's certainly helping people, not in the same way, but
I like to look for the service jobs that I can do because there's always more people that need to help the world. Mm-hmm. Enough people bring it down, enough people get hurt. It's nice to be able to watch somebody grow and be able to know that you helped make the world a little bit better.
Is that something that drew you to the FFA?
It is not. I actually joined FFA because I was bored. As a bad starter sort, but I won my first contest at the district level, went to state, and I fell in love after that.
Okay. Well, I mean, however you get into it, I knew guys that became really active in FFA, and the only reason that they got into it is because there was a girl that they liked that was in it. So, I mean, you're not the only person to get into it for less than altruistic reasons and discover, hey, there's really a lot of good here.
Yeah, I never followed a boy.
That's probably smart. But anyway, so tell us, Skylar, that kicked off your FFA career. How old are you now? Are you like a junior, senior?
I'm 18, so I just graduated high school, and I will be since I did dual enrollment, I'll technically be a sophomore in college whenever I go in.
Okay, so if you get a state office now, then that means that you'll be one of our college state officers.
I will be.
Yeah, see, that wasn't even a thing when I was in it. You had to be in high school. They've amended the Constitution now to where you can do that as a college student, which I think is great. It gives a lot more flexibility to people.
It does, and they're actually talking about now making it to where it's only, I think, seniors and high school graduates.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I mean, I personally would rather see it more open, just the best candidate gets it, but nonetheless, that's interesting. So tell us exactly about the process so far of becoming a state officer, and you don't know if you're going to get it. Are there 12 candidates this year? They have a full slate?
It is 12 candidates. We always have 4 from each district.
Right.
And it's a very nerve-wracking procedure altogether.
Oh, yeah.
You have first your application that you turn in a couple months beforehand. Mm-hmm. You have a very hard test. It was much harder this year.
So, and I don't know how North District does it. I assume that you had to go through an interview process already just to get to this level?
Yes, you had to go through the district interview process because we had 7 candidates but 4 spots.
Okay. So you did make it into the top 4, and now you're here representing the North District.
Yes, I am. I'm hoping to be the top 6 tomorrow.
Yeah. That's the thing. Half the candidates don't make it.
Yeah, and I was actually the half that didn't make it last year.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, and I was telling this earlier to Trace, who of course is running as well. I hope that this is the case, because as of now, Tactics has an unbroken record. Everybody that has appeared on this program that ran for office got the office. So hopefully that's the way that it is this time.
I do hope so. That would be that's a nice good luck charm to have.
Right. It's always nice to have that. And so far we're undefeated. We even at the national level, Jordan Stowe. So,
nice.
So yeah, we are undefeated as of now. Hopefully that continues on. But so tell us a little bit about the process, the interview process, and how you sort of reacted and responded to that.
Well, we had the test. Like I said, probably the hardest test I've ever taken. We had a business letter to write, and then we had 5 separate interviews. You have your first round of personal interviews, one with each judge, and they can ask you anything they want about you, your SAE, and that one's the best interview. You can be yourself. You can be very fun, very stress-free. The next one is FFA and parliamentary procedure. They can ask you anything about parliamentary procedure, FFA history, knowledge, any of it. That one, you really have to study for it.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't, then you don't know it. They're going to knock you off. And then the third one is a group interview. Usually they will sort out the teams about who they think will work the best, who will stand out as a leader, and that shows who's going to rise above, who's going to be above and beyond as a state officer. And then today we started with our agricultural issues. Since we are an agricultural organization, we have the whole interview dedicated to it, where they can ask you anything agriculturally going on in the world right now and in the past. And then I got a question today actually about where we think the agricultural issues will be 10 years in the future. So all of them. Right. And then our final interview is one, it's called Committee's Choice. They can do anything they want. They were throwing bowls at other candidates today.
That doesn't surprise me.
They're seeing how they
were
react.
shooting rubber bands at us, so.
It's very interesting.
Right.
She looked at me and she held out the bowl. She cut one of the other candidates' hands on the bowl.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were allowed to injure candidates.
It was a little accident, but she was like, I'm not throwing it anymore.
See, that's weird, because the other interviews are very academic and formal, and then you're like in Lord of the Flies for a few minutes.
That's exactly
strange.
how it is. They can ask you anything. I got asked my favorite movie.
Okay.
And they're like, why is that your favorite movie? And I was like, well, I can only pick a current one. I have about 1 billion.
Right.
So I picked one and had to explain why.
Just out of curiosity, what did you pick?
I picked The Perfect Date on Netflix. It came out a few months ago.
Okay.
I think it's a very goofy story. I like how goofy it is. I also like how it shows his self-discovery and how, despite him being perfect, he is not perfect.
So I wanted to ask this because, and I mean, I have a pretty good idea of it, but for our listening audience that isn't familiar with this process, why do the nom-coms that are in charge of selecting the state officers, why do they focus so much on getting both practical knowledge and getting a sense of your personality? Why is it important that they get both of those things?
Because if you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you do not have the personality to be a state officer, because you have to be willing to get up in front of people, you have to be willing to speak in front of 2,000 people and be okay with it. And if you don't have the personality for that, you don't have the ability to do that, you shouldn't be a state officer. And I hate to put it so bluntly, but if you can't do that and you freeze up...
Well, it's a tough job.
It is. You are constantly in front of people. You are the face of the FFA, or of your association.
Right.
So you have to be able to
Which in this
present
state is 15,000 members.
Yes.
And so it's a lot of people to represent.
You have to make sure you're representing them well.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I wanted to bring out too, because I think you're 100% right on that, but the reverse is also true. You can't just be a great personality. There's some people with great personalities, but they don't know enough about the FFA to fulfill the role either, and so it takes both.
Yeah, and since we are agricultural, that's why they add the agricultural one. And while I don't think it's as important as knowing, say, the creed, your opening ceremonies, I do think it is probably one of the most important.
Right, because we are an ag organization.
We are. So if you don't know the basics at least, then you're it's iffy.
Right. So since you are running for office, what office would you most like to have? What office do you think fits you the best?
I think president or vice president fits me the best. I have 2 years of district officer experience and 3 years of chapter officer. I've done all the workshops. I've done a lot of things over the last few years. And I just feel like I have grown so much that now I actually can step into those shoes and be able to fulfill it.
Okay, great. Well, we certainly wish you the best of luck. We'd love to see you get an office, if nothing else, just from selfish reasons, just to keep my streak going.
I can't blame you there.
Yeah, but it seems like you're well prepared for that, and of course, if that's true, the nominating committee will see that as well and put you up there.
Let's hope.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Skylar Eckel, the North District Vice President and a candidate for state office this time. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. We'll be back in just a moment.
In 1775, the Continental Congress created the Chaplain Corps. Under the command of General George Washington, each soldier was required to attend worship service every Sunday. While other armies advanced on their feet, Washington's troops advanced on their knees. It's time for the Chaplain's Report with Caleb Colquitt on tactics.
Chaplain's Report today, since we are at the FFA convention, I thought it was only appropriate that we do something with more of an agriculture leaning, and the truth is, that wasn't even something that was very difficult to do. I think that it is a profound truth that part of the reason that God structured his word in the way that he did is because he wanted to make it accessible to the average man. So that the everyday working person, somebody that worked directly in agriculture, whether it be growing crops or taking care of animals, that they could relate to it. And for the longest time throughout human history, even if you weren't somebody that did that, even if you were, for example, a merchant or in the Jewish tradition, a priest, you were still around that kind of lifestyle and you were still around people that lived that lifestyle on a regular basis, and because of that, it was very relatable, very easy for you to understand when God would use a truth about nature, about agriculture, to illustrate a spiritual truth. And that is no exception in this next passage that we're going to go ahead and look at from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 4 through 7. And this is Christ speaking, where he says, "What man among you, if he has 100 sheep, has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open pasture and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep, which was lost.' I tell you that in the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over the 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." This is of course, very famous passage, and one that has a powerful message about Christ and his love for his children, for those that are in the family, that are part of the body of Christ in the church, and the great compassion he has for those that unfortunately have not joined that body yet. That he has a great deal of concern for those that are lost because he cares about them. He wants them to be a part of that fold. But it also says something else too, and this is something that Christians revere, and rightfully so, but to the point that I think a lot of people don't really understand. Did you know that in the early church, and especially because they had to do a lot of hiding, they couldn't really be very vocal about their faith, or at least not as public about it. They certainly did preach, they certainly did spread the gospel, but they were a little more cautious about the way that they shared it than we are today, because they didn't have religious freedom and they knew that they could be thrown in prison for it, and many of them were. Many of them suffered greatly for trying to spread the gospel. But the point is, they did have sort of codes, and they had sort of ways to let other people know, yes, I'm a member of the church, and because of that, you can trust me. You don't have to watch your speech around me. This is something that I want to talk about, that I can talk about. And so because of that, imagery became very, very important to the first church. And different images projected different aspects of Christianity. But you know what the most famous image of the early church was? What image that they liked to use the most to convey that they were people who had obeyed the gospel? It wasn't the cross. Because at the time, Rome was still crucifying people. And so it would be very strange for you to wear a cross around your neck. I mean, to put it in modern day terms, it would be like wearing a lethal injection syringe or wearing an electric chair on a necklace. That wouldn't make any sense to them. And so it would be something that would be very odd, very off-putting, and so they didn't use the symbol of the cross until much later. A symbol that they used earlier, but not quite as early, is the Jesus fish. The common design that we're all familiar with, and that comes from the story of Christ saying that he was going to make his apostles fishers of men. That was an early symbol and certainly an important symbol, but it still wasn't the most popular symbol of the day amongst Christians in the early church. The image that was usually depicted as the symbol of Christianity back then was the image of Christ carrying a lamb on his shoulders. And there are several reasons for that, because Christ not only refers to himself in this parable from the Gospel of Luke as the Good Shepherd, but he also portrays himself as being the Lamb of God himself. And so there's almost a dual use here of using an image of a man carrying a sheep up on his shoulders. But we're going to focus more on the one of the lost lamb, since that's the passage that we just looked at. There is something very powerful and something very comforting about knowing that there is a God out there, that there is a Savior that cares enough about you to leave the comfort of his own flock. I mean, you've got 100 sheep, and you could, at least from an economic perspective, say, well, it wouldn't make any sense to leave the 99 you've got to look after the one, to go after that one that's missing. You've got plenty of sheep. You don't need that other sheep, and that sheep, that might even be one that gets lost again. That might be one that doesn't stay around. It may not be one that's going to be all that productive. None of that matters to the Good Shepherd. You see, the Good Shepherd sees a sheep that is lost and desires to save it. Now, there is a little bit of difference here between the parallel and what is actually going to happen in the church. Jesus doesn't save anybody by force. He doesn't drag them back to the pasture. But any sheep that wants to be saved, any of his lost lambs, he gladly welcomes them back. He seeks them out. He wants them to be a part of that fold. He desires their presence in the godly kingdom. And so because of that, he leaves the 99 because he knows that they're secure. He doesn't leave them unguarded. He knows that the main thing that he hates to leave is that he's leaving their presence to pursue this lost lamb. Kind of like the prodigal son, which is another parable that has some implication here. But let's really focus in here that we have a God that loves us enough to leave comfort, even though he doesn't need another sheep per se. He doesn't need our presence. He doesn't need our love. But he still desires it enough to go after us. He desires it enough that he risked his life. He risked his safety. And Jesus did that when he came to earth as a human being. That he risked everything he had to just have a chance to rescue that lost lamb. And when he finds that lost lamb, he doesn't just pick it up sort of in a nonchalant way, in a way that the animal might be injured. He doesn't, just smack it and make it walk home itself. He doesn't put a halter on it and drag it home. No. He's a good shepherd. And because of that, he takes the lamb up, puts it over his shoulders, drapes it there, and carries it on his back home. And isn't that really symbolic of the relationship that we have with Christ? I mean, yes, we have to take the first step. We're the ones that have to obey the gospel, do the will of his Father, do the things that he asks us to do. But ultimately, we're still not the ones doing the heavy lifting. It's not our works that are earning our salvation. It's Jesus Christ that says, no, this lamb is lost. I'm going to do the heavy lifting. Do we still have to be found? Sure. But it is ultimately Christ that picks us up and wraps us around his neck and carries us all the way home back to safety. And the way that passage in Luke ends is that there is great rejoicing, that even the angels of heaven sing and are thrilled, are so overjoyed that they break out in song at the one lost lamb coming back home. After hearing that, there's no reason, there's no doubt in my mind and no wondering left as to why this image of Jesus carrying his lamb home was a powerful symbol for the first century church, and maybe it's one that needs to be revived by the modern Christians, because there is no greater symbol of love than somebody that is willing to go out and rescue you in your plight. And that's exactly who Jesus Christ is for us. Stay the course, friends. Tactics is a production of News Radio 1440 and Cumulus Media Montgomery. Any opinions expressed on this program are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Cumulus Media. The theme song for Tactics is 6 Foot Town by Big and Rich. Graphics by Jessica Dawson. Broadcast studios provided by Cumulus Media Montgomery. Location studios provided by the Dalraida Church of Christ. Copyright 2019.